Hello, thank you so much for watching. This is the Positive Vibes Podcast. I am your host, Kelly Fitzgerald. Fair warning, I'm a little bit under the weather dealing with sinus stuff. So if I'm coughing and sneezing at some point, please forgive me and bear with me here. My guest today is, and I should have asked you before this, is Greco, Colleen Greco.
hmm
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I just usually do that before, but I am a little under the weather here. So she has a really interesting background. I know a lot of you guys who watch me all the time were aware of my weight loss journey and how, I got sick. I actually died, not because of that, but regaining your health is so much about mindset, and it's so much about just having someone to tell you what to do. So, welcome to the show. Let's start there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I apologize, but thank God for the mute button because you just made me laugh, which started a coughing fit on my side. So, hi everyone, Colleen Greco. So nice to be here today. Thank you for having me, Kelly. And I love the conversation. I think anytime we can shine a spotlight on um, each other's journey, there's something we can learn from that. And I'm always looking to learn just that new little nugget or a
Right.
reminder of that little nugget that I needed to hear that maybe I wasn't ready to hear at one point, and I'm ready to hear it now. And that's when it sinks in. And so I think it's so important that we talk about fitness and mindset, nutrition, and how they're all inextricably linked, and spirituality. I mean, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty fascinating I guess, bundle of topics.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. It's for me personally, it was kind of a frustrating journey trying to regain my health.
Yeah.
And particularly when I had people in my life at that time who were constantly putting me down. And I think a lot
Right.
of, particularly women, and men go through it too, but I think mostly women, we are so, if someone that we care about, someone we love is putting us down, it kind of hits harder. It's not like the random
Yeah.
stranger down the street saying, "Why'd you wear that today?" It's someone you know and care about and is supposed to be supportive of you. I think a lot of people just have that issue. Was that
Yeah.
something that you coach people through as well? I think that kind of falls into mindset a little bit.
For sure. Yeah. And would it be helpful for me to share a little bit of my story to kind of
Yes,
like
please.
lay the groundwork? Okay. So I've always had an interest in fitness and nutrition, so it wasn't like a crazy stretch, but when you look at my career, I have spent my entire life in IT marketing in various leadership roles,
Yeah.
right? So it wasn't like how did you make the jump? What happened was what my younger son had a suicide attempt,
Mhm,
and he was being bullied, and he was uh he was a shining, or is, I shouldn't say was, is a shining light.
mhm.
He's a really great kid, very athletic, very outgoing. Everybody loves him. We would have never thought that he would
Right.
have this type of experience. But, that's generally what happens. And so when that happened, and it, like I said, took us off guard, I just crashed into a
Right.
million pieces. And you might imagine I ate and drank quite a bit during those
Yeah.
early moments, not knowing how to keep him safe. I had just started a new job. I wasn't sure, like, do I tell them? How do I how do I fit this in and not get in trouble type of a thing?
Right.
Because that's very much the culture that I was in. And uh, so I put on a lot of weight very quickly. In the meantime, we're trying to find a therapist and a doctor that would work with us as part of like our care team. And
Right.
we couldn't get any return phone calls. I made over 150 phone calls until I finally said, like, enough is enough. We just have to do this ourselves because we're not getting the support we need. And ironically, we live in Boston. So that's like where
You
all
should
the
get them
therapists
support. Yeah.
and where everybody lives. And so as I was, lying out there on the hallway floor right in front of my front door, crying, contemplating my own end of life, saying like, I can't handle this and I didn't sign up for this. This was
Right.
not how my life was supposed to go. Joy was the thing, and there it is, joy, um, was the thing that sort of just sprung to mind. Like the way that you heal yourself and heal your family is through joy,
Right.
which, as you sit there, you think like, oh, that's cute, but what does that mean? And so what I, did was we just looked for joy in the smallest of moments. We just looked at every little thing we possibly could, like the birds outside, the sun, being in Boston in the colder months, not a lot of joy. There's a lot of darkness, right? But like maybe it's the peace of the winter, right? Like we can
Right.
find something. And so we just look to piece those little moments together because in the early days, it is living second by second. You are not thinking about what you're having for lunch. You're thinking about like, how do I make it to the next second? And is my kid going to be safe? And so over time, that's kind of like how we set him up for success. And when I started to address my own health, I thought, I can't help him and myself. Like it was just too much and a new job. I have another son and a husband and dogs. And so I looked for a nutrition coach. I was going to this gym, and this woman that was, I don't know, probably 15, 20 years older than me lost a significant amount of weight. And I thought, okay, at that point, I was in my 40s. And so I thought, wow, okay, she's through menopause, maybe post menopause. And so that's that's an age bracket where you're not supposed to be able to lose weight, right?
Right.
That's supposed to be like your death sentence. But it wasn't. She lost 25, 30 pounds. And I asked her, what is your secret? And even though I knew there was no secret, she turned me on to a nutrition coach. And that's kind of how the whole thing started when I was working with a nutrition coach. And I asked him to help me develop strategies to keep the weight off. He said, I'm not your therapist. And I thought, oh my gosh, if you don't understand the connection between mindset and nutrition, you have completely missed the boat.
Right.
And in defense to him, he was like 23 and had 0% body fat. So he did not understand my world.
Right. Right.
But that's how the whole thing started. That's where the Joyologist was born. That was that day when I was asking him that and he came back with that response. I thought, that's the missing piece to this whole thing. That's how we keep the weight off is
Right.
through mindset.
Right. Yeah. And I think, at least for me and for a lot of people that I've worked with through the years, it's also being conscious. You can have the mindset of, I'm going to get through this, I'm paying attention to him. But when you're conscious, it kind of like, that's that thought that keeps coming up that makes me want to go
Mm.
eat cookies,
Hmm.
and that was difficult for me. But it's one of those things, it's kind of hard to grasp in the beginning, but once you get it, you've got it. It's not something that, okay, I figured it out. Oh, now I lost it. It's not one of those. Like a lot of diet programs, I found diet programs just flat out don't work unless
No.
you combine it with mindset and realize what you're eating. You're not following someone else's instructions. You got to figure out what works for you.
You're right. And I tell people all the time, it's like saying you want to run a marathon.
Right.
You don't just go out and run a marathon, you train for it. And so when you're talking about like the mindset piece isn't really obvious in the beginning, no, because you're in the fray. Right now, you're like on the website contemplating signing up for the marathon, haven't really run your first mile. Like, let's get you out there. Let's get you doing the mile, build a little confidence. Then maybe you go to a mile and a half or 2 miles. Same with this. This is about like getting your ducks in a row, understanding the food that your body, your individual body wants and needs, and how to fuel your body for those goals. And your goal might just be to walk up the stairs without being winded, which
Yes.
is an equally important goal to wanting to run a marathon.
Yeah.
They're both just as important because they matter to you.
Right.
And so I tell people all the time, don't ever discount your goals, ever. They're important to you. So that's what makes them the most important thing. And we will chip away over time. And as you build confidence, you can handle a little bit more. You start to understand, every time that trigger comes up, you're running for the pantry. Why is that?
Right.
And that's where the SNAP method comes in. And that's how we work through limiting beliefs. And the more we do that, the more you can release them, the less emotional response you have to food. Now, when I go to get some M&Ms, it's because I just want M&Ms. I
Right.
don't, I'm not looking to binge an entire bag. I just want them.
I
I
think
have
that
them.
touches on something really important for people. When you are constantly depriving yourself, I can never eat another cookie again. You're wanting it more and more.
Oh,
Don't do
all
that
the
to
cookies.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. We work it into people's plans. So I tell people all the time, we start with your non-negotiables, the things that if I told you right now you could never have again, you would quit. You'd be
right,
like, that's it. I won't be successful. It's impossible.
right.
Those are the things we work in and make that sort of like the cornerstone so that you don't feel deprived because you shouldn't have to. I mean, I have cookies. Now they're gluten free because I do have a gluten allergy that I also used to ignore. Um,
Right.
but, I fit them in, I make them happen. And I'm, 5.5 years now that I have kept 52 pounds off because I know what my body needs and wants. And I make space for the things that matter. I have the French fries, I have the whoopie pies. I just don't have them 3 times a day, 7 days a week,
Yeah,
and expect to fit into my clothes.
right, right. And what is important also that I find a lot of programs, at least the ones that I tried, left out. You have to congratulate yourself for those simple little tiny
Yes.
first steps. You have to do that. You know,
Yes.
I had had a major surgery where I lost a kidney and I
Oh my
was
goodness.
depressed. I decided, okay, I'm dying now. I'm just going to lay down here and die
Yeah.
because they told me it's lupus and it attacks, excuse me, all your organs. You know, it
Mhm.
doesn't just stop. And I'm like, okay, I'm dead. And I gained so much weight from that depression, from
Yeah.
that, well, you're alive. You had the surgery. It saved your life. I wasn't thinking that way.
Yeah.
And the first thing I had to congratulate myself for was the morning I woke up and went, thank you for another day.
Yeah.
I've never done that before. And that
Yep.
was my turning point on with that depression. I got through it. I worked through it. But had I not learned, YouTube videos are amazing, aren't they? I heard someone say, congratulate yourself, be grateful for every day, congratulate yourself when you're grateful. I don't care what you're grateful for. And that was their whole thing was gratitude. And that made all the difference in the world for me.
It's a huge difference. Your body doesn't know the difference between like your thoughts and the reality. So the things that you're thinking, your body believes that as truth.
Yeah,
And so I tell people all the time, we celebrate everything
yeah,
all the time. I don't care how uncomfortable it makes you. Let's give yourself a high five. Like you prioritized sleep over scrolling on your phone. That's huge. That makes a huge um, difference to the neural pathways in your brain. You don't think about it that way, of course, but it really does. And you have to celebrate the time that you didn't run to the pantry, but you stopped and you like allowed yourself to just kind of be in that moment and let it wash over you. It's uncomfortable, but just sit there and celebrate that or celebrate the time that you bit your tongue instead of snapping back at someone or
yeah.
you know, you skipped the cookie aisle at the grocery store because you went during lunch when you're hungry, right? Think about all the great things. I celebrate every day in my journal. The first thing I'd open it, but it's like it's way over there out of reach. The first entry every single morning says celebrate first. It's the first thing I do is celebrate something from yesterday. I don't care if it's that I woke up today and maybe the rest of the day felt like an absolute avalanche, but that isn't a guarantee. So celebrate the fact that you're like, I woke up today, or celebrate the fact that, one of yesterday's celebrations was I had a great conversation with my son on the way to bring him back to college. Like that isn't food related, but that is a thing. Like I made a conscious effort to have a really great conversation with him on the way back to college. I didn't have to do that, and he didn't have to do that. We are working on that relationship together,
Right.
right? That deserves celebration.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned finding things that are not food related. I think that is
Yeah.
huge. That was huge for me. I come from a
Yeah.
long line of people who celebrate everything with food, stress over everything with food. It's food essential. Every picture at the family reunions, every single year, were people stuffing their face with whatever was
Yeah.
handy.
Yep.
So, how do people find something else to use instead of food? How do you start replacing that?
I have a woman that comes to mind that was like, well, that's what our culture does is we
Mhm.
eat a lot and we like that's our version of community. And I said, okay, I understand that. I have nothing against like the things that you're doing, but you can't stuff your face and expect to feel the way that you want to feel,
Right.
right? So like there has to be a little bit of give and take. So could you bring your own food to that event that was like heavily fried and very carb heavy and no protein
Yep.
whatsoever? Could you bring your own food? And because I believe when you are going to those things, you're actually looking for community, like the conversation between people. And those are the things that you're actually going to remember, not the, enchiladas or whatever, right? Like nothing against enchiladas. It's just the thing that popped in my mind. But that isn't really the thing that you're going to go home and talk about. You're going to be like, Remember that funny conversation Kelly and I had? That was so funny." And you reflect on that.
Right.
So be honest with yourself as to why you're attending those things.
Yeah.
If it really is for the food, maybe you can eat beforehand, kind of fill yourself up so that you partake in the food, but not to the levels that you used to. If it really is about the food. But I believe it's about the community, it's about the interpersonal connection. And if that's the case, then the food shouldn't matter. Bring your own, set yourself up for success, and focus on the conversations that you want to have.
That's a really good suggestion. Some people have families where, and I had one of these, where you go to a family reunion and while you're talking to them, there's whatever they've got in their hands, they're putting it on your plate. And you'll have like a mountain of
Yep.
something you didn't even want. And then,
Right.
oh, come on, just a bite, just a bite. Well, you've put a quarter pound on my food. Oh, that's a big bite. Um, Saying no, thank you was a huge thing as well. A lot of people just don't want to disappoint someone. We don't want to
Of
offend
course.
anyone. And how do you just a bite means really just a bite, not like three ladles,
Well, knowing it's more about them than about you, right? That makes them feel good that they're giving it to you. I have a neighbor who she's from Egypt and she cooks like constantly. And anytime I do something nice for her, she brings food over. Well, her food is like riddled with gluten. I can't have it. And I was feeling really bad. Like, I know that she went through a lot of effort and
Right,
I'm never going to eat it. Maybe my family will. I don't know, but I'm not. And I feel guilty about that. So I finally sat her down and said, Listen, I so appreciate this. I know this is your love language, but it literally is hurting me.
right,
Like it's a food allergy. It is hurting my insides. Maybe you
right.
can't see that, but I can feel it and it will shut my system down for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Like it's not a quick thing.
right.
And it was really uncomfortable, but she said, "I get it." She said, "Well, what could I do instead?" I said, "You could just say thank you.
Yeah,
That's fine. That means more to me than whatever you brought over, truly. I know that makes you feel good, but if you're trying to give me what I want, a thank you is just fine." My husband, sweetest guy on the planet, was trying to I forget what he was doing, but I remember saying like, "I don't know how to say this in a way that can get in. You're hurting me." And he was like, "Whoa.
hmm,
I didn't realize I was hurting you." And I said, "So I know that you wouldn't want to hurt me. Can you just stop doing that?" And he's like, "Oh, I got it." And a
right.
friend that is always saying, "Oh yeah, come over. I made gluten-free whatever." I'm like, "Okay, thank you, but it's also soy, dairy, and grains, okay? It's not just gluten, but I just don't want to make it complicated. Can I just bring my own food and spend the time with you instead?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, that's totally fine. We don't care if you bring your own food." I'm like, "That would make me feel safe."
Right.
Because again, like you bring up safety, people are like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
And when you it's true that you probably shouldn't have to explain your goals to anybody, but when you say, like, this is really important to me and I'm working hard on it and I'm investing in myself, and I feel uncomfortable that you're pushing so hard, they will back off.
Yeah.
Um, the food allergy thing helps. You can feel free to take that, even if it's not true, because people really do back off. They understand, like, not everybody can process
Right.
everything. But when you talk about like rocking somebody's safety or being uncomfortable or in pain, they completely back off. Um, and the ones that don't, you have to understand that that's really about them, not about you. You make them uncomfortable. Maybe they wish they were strong enough to invest in themselves. And the fact that you are, there's a bit of jealousy.
Yeah.
I've come across that many times.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into the SNAP program that you have. I
Yeah.
was reading about it, and it's common sense things
Hmm.
that nobody really thinks about. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. And this isn't something that I feel like needs to take a lot of time every day. But
Right.
if you can just get a little present and intentional, you can let all of this stuff go. And that frees up so much space within your own mind and your own body. The SNAP method came to me after the coach told me he wasn't my therapist.
Right.
And I was like, I need strategies. Like, so, I'm sitting outside with my dog and I'm like, there's got to be like, how have I let some of these other things go, especially the bullying, right? Because
Mhm.
remember, my son was bullied. What I left out was that the kids' parents were our friends. So we felt betrayed too. Like there was
Right.
all kinds of things going on, but I was able to let some of that go at this time. And I'm like, well, what were the steps that I took? And what rose to the surface, literally in a matter of minutes, was the SNAP method. So it's a methodology that helps you remove the limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck, that are causing you to run to the pantry. And the more you practice, the better you get. So it's an acronym. S stands for stop. And so this is all around when the trigger presents itself to you,
Right.
right? Maybe I see that mom out and about and I'm like, it brings you right back to that moment. You
Right.
know. Um, when that trigger presents itself, there's always a physical, visceral response. Like you get like a lump in your throat or burning in your chest, or you start to shake or panic. But the first thing you do is you just stop and you just allow it in. Like it's already here.
Right.
Just let it in. There's no use fighting it.
Right.
It's back. And it's really important to just notice, well, now moving on to N already, but it's really important to just allow the trigger to just settle.
Right.
And by stop, I'm saying 5 minutes, like just bringing the emotion down. And then you move to N, which is notice. And that's when I tell people to take out their journal or notebook or probably not a phone. I tell people try not to use a technical device because there is
Right.
a psychological connection between the brain, your fingertips, the pen, and the paper that you
Right.
can't replicate on a laptop. So if you can write it down, that's more powerful. But the whole point is to notice what's going on in your body. What's that physical, visceral response? Did you start to sweat? I get a lump in my throat every single
Hmm.
time, right there. It's
Yeah.
like I can't swallow. Some people, their heart races. Some people get that urge to like instantly, fire back. So this isn't the time to text back or make a phone call to your best friend. You can handle this yourself. But
Right.
that's that moment. Record all uh, the facts as you believe them to be.
Right.
So the triggers hit, you believe you've been like offended or compromised in some way. This isn't the time to judge it. Just write it all down the way that you believe it to be. And then once you have kind of calmed the nervous system down a little bit and you're a little bit more on even ground, go back and separate the facts from the emotions, right? The person said this, I reacted that way. Like
Right.
separate those out. And that's where you can really get a lot of intelligence about what's going on.
Right,
And the more that you can do that, the more that you can see the situation for its reality.
right.
Um, so then, that's the next step, which is accept or analyze. This is when you are able to separate that fact from the emotion, and you can see the trigger for what it is. The last step is P, which is practice gratitude. And that is when you literally thank the trigger for coming,
It's
which
healing, actually.
it is very healing. But it reminds you that you still have a little work to do.
Right,
You haven't really completely let that thing go. And this is your body's way of telling you that you're just kind of like not fully healed yet. And there's nothing wrong with that.
right.
Um, but the more that you can do that work, the more you can remove the emotion from it, see it for what it is. It's super powerful. I tell people all the time, mirrors are your greatest teachers. Like somebody said something and you got offended by it. What's that about? It's about you.
Right.
It isn't about what they said. They just revealed the thing about you that you haven't fully dealt with.
I think that's an important point for people because so many people um, don't think of it that way. They're thinking, oh, they're attacking me. No, they're showing you what you need to heal. And
Yeah.
it's a change in perception there that you need to do. They're not attacking you, they're showing you what you needed to see. Um,
Right.
Sometimes
Right.
people
Because
don't want to
once,
take that, they don't want that responsibility.
exactly. And once you've dealt with that, the next time they say that exact same thing, it's just going to drive right by you.
Right.
You're going to be like, that used to really upset me.
Yep.
Wild.
Yeah.
But you've let it go. You have no more emotional attachment to it, and so they're just words.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really important for people to take away. I know so many people that I have coached through the years um, that have a really tough time accepting that responsibility. And if
Yeah.
you can start realizing these things for what they really are, this person's not attacking you, you know.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes people do, but that's not what, that's, yeah, different thing. But most often, people aren't meaning to hurt you. They're saying something, they're expressing their opinion of something, and
Yeah.
we take it personally. And if you
Well,
can,
and then, oh, sorry, I just got
no, go
excited.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I
Yeah,
was going to say, and then, when you think about you were about to call somebody,
yeah,
because that's a lot of women do that. I used to do that. That's you. That's a very toxic thing to do. You now have like vomited your problem onto
yep,
somebody else that has their own stuff
right.
to deal with.
And you've given
And
it more power by doing that.
right.
Yeah,
My husband's one of his favorite like phrases during that time is you're giving this thing more oxygen,
yep,
and fires need oxygen to keep burning. And I was like,
yep.
oh, you're so right. I hate it when you're right. But he was right. He
Yeah,
was right.
yeah,
I was giving it oxygen. And really I was I was really upset that I felt like they didn't deal with it. I was really upset that they were our friends.
yeah,
Um, and that, you know, like they didn't come to support my kid.
right.
And it was like, but the truth is, he didn't need their support. All he needed was love. And the more love we showered on him, the better he went. He just got accepted into college.
Yay.
He has, I don't know how many college acceptances now, like of great big schools. Like he's thriving.
Yeah,
He's thriving. And there was a time when I didn't know if we would have to take the doors off of his hinges. I didn't know um, if he would try again. Like all of these things. And his mental health is so solid because we focused on like what was in these walls instead of out there.
I
Yeah.
think that's important for people too, especially when they're trying to make big changes in their lives.
Hmm.
Focus on the inside of you, inside your own wall, and then your house, and then everything else. But people are always looking for answers out there. When we have
Yeah.
them in here, we just have to realize that and find them. Sometimes
Yeah.
people don't realize what's right here.
Right. And the way that they respond to to this whole thing is actually none of my business.
Right,
And that was another huge lesson to learn was that, I believe in God. I believe like he's going to take care of that
right,
however he decides to take it. That is like none of my business.
right,
My business is what's in these walls.
right.
And that was really healing too. Like, oh, I don't actually have to worry about that. That's great.
Yeah,
It just allows me more time to worry about them, my
right. And
family. That's
yeah, but that's all very important for people to hear,
yeah.
and I really, it all comes down to love. I think love heals everything, really.
Love is the answer to every single thing.
It's just important to not, I think people have to stress out and worry first. And then they kind of back off a little bit and say, oh, you know what? I didn't die. It's okay. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know why we do that as humanity, but it's so many of us, we're like, panic first, then find the solution. Well, if you look for the solution, you don't have to panic, you know?
I'm so passionate about this particular topic too, because I have like seen that play out in real time in my own life as well.
Mhm.
My older son and I weren't getting along, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, he's not doing this and he's not doing that, and he's so this and he's so that. And I was like, oh, I do that. Oh, oh boy. I think, yep, that kind of resonates with what is going on in my life right now.
Yep,
Uh-oh. So again, mirrors. What if I just loved on him? So, same thing. I said, I'm not going to nitpick. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to love on him. So, when he comes down in the morning and I am annoyed that he hasn't done this or something isn't cleaned up, I'm just going to be like, good morning and love on him like crazy. And I am telling you, from that day, our rapidly declining relationship went like through the roof like overnight. It was absolutely crazy. All of my situations also resolved like within 2 weeks or something like that. It was absolutely wild. The more I loved on him, and what I didn't realize is all the things I was doing, I thought I was helping him. Like, oh,
right.
maybe he just needs help organizing and he's just kind of like all over the place. He's a teenager. Um, I was actually controlling him.
Yeah, that's the way.
I just thought I was doing it out of
Right,
love. So I call it like soft control. I wasn't trying to be a control freak, but
right,
that's exactly what I was doing. And when I let go of control and allowed him to, get close to the edge, but not completely jump off the
right,
cliff, um, everything changed. And he picked up more responsibility like that because it was now his decision to
right.
do or not do. And so, you're talking about love. I literally had that discovery, it was like 3 years ago now, that love is literally the answer to everything. What if I just loved on you instead of criticized you for this or that, or judged you for this or that? How about if I just loved you? Doesn't that sound easier?
Yeah. It's a lot easier. It's just tough to get to that point, I think.
Yeah, way less effort, a lot more fun.
Yeah.
So do that instead.
Right. Yeah, I had a client for a long time who actually coached his son's little league baseball team. And every time I hear that, I'm coaching my sons, I go, ah, because it's so likely that something is going to transpire that's going to put a real rift in their relationship.
Yep.
And, and he had to learn, instead of criticizing, he would say, well, you know what? That was an interesting way to do that, but let me show you something that might work better for you.
Yeah.
And when he changed everything changed. His relationship with his son, his relationship with his other kids, everything changed. And it was just switching his words around, you
Tiny
know,
little, tiny
and
little pivot.
and he couldn't, he's better now years later, but at
Yeah.
that time the concept of him telling his son he loved him was like foreign, different language, different planet, different universe, not going to happen. And he had to learn that as well. And I think particularly a lot of men have that hang up about that because they have a different definition of the word love than what it really means.
Yeah.
It was just something to learn. But I watched that experience and it was so connected with what you were just saying. I had to bring that up because it's amazing what love can do.
I'm glad you did because I think people think it's so much more complicated than that. And we know that life is crazy complicated, but the easiest path through is usually very simple.
Yeah,
And it's sort of like, well, why didn't I think of that? Well, because you were distracted
yeah,
in a hyper scheduled, over-connected world. You were
yeah,
distracted. So people like you and I come in and say it's about love. You're like,
yeah.
it couldn't
That's
be.
what he did too.
It couldn't be. It's like,
Yeah,
well, just try it.
yeah.
And then call me and thank me in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's amazing. Before I let you go, I do want to kind of go back to a weight loss thing. And so many women clients, and I used to teach Reiki classes, and I would
Oh,
have
yeah.
in the middle of summer come in wearing long sleeve shirts and baggy thing, and you knew they were hot. It's 100 degrees outside. You're in my garage. It's not air conditioned. And I finally, why? Well, because I have this going on. And it was so funny because and I had that too, because I had a very rapid weight loss. But it's so funny how every other woman in that class was like, yeah, me too, me too. And gradually, sweatshirts came off and t-shirts were okay. Is there anything besides realizing it's really not that big a deal that that people can take away? What exercises can you do that will actually tighten up loose skin? Are there any?
Yes, definitely. Now I will say I have a little right now. Well, now I'm not flexing. Okay, there we go. I have some right now, but I'm dealing with a back issue. So I'm not really doing as much upper body, but
Right,
I'll get that back because, muscles they have great memory and they'll be like, "Oh, welcome back." So once you hit, your 40s, and I'm
mhm,
talking to women, you lose a significant amount of upper body strength. That
right,
is just a fact. You cannot deny it. It is happening to you. You are already in menopause. Whether or not you've lost the physical evidence doesn't matter. You're in it. You're starting it.
yep,
So the more you lose estrogen, the more you lose a lot of upper body strength. And so it's really important you do some upper body weightlifting. And I'm not talking like mass barbell stuff, unless that's what you like. But
right,
using dumbbells 3 times a week, absolutely, because you just need it to make your way through life. Your upper body changes dramatically. Um, when it comes to tightening skin, it is a lower weight, higher rep count that causes tone. If you do a heavier dumbbell, you also get a little bit of brain fog the more you get into menopause. That's a fun one.
okay,
So that's what that was. I'm like dumbbell. The if you use a heavier dumbbell weight and you do less reps, then you will bulk. But you will
right,
not bulk by doing lower dumbbell weights and higher rep counts. So when I'm talking higher rep counts, I'm talking like, you know, 12 to 15. 3 sets of 12 to 15, 3 times a week. You will get definition, you'll get tone. I also tell people protein. So I talk a lot about macros. They're proteins, carbs, and fats. They are
mhm,
in every single food. That is what makes up your food. Everything you eat is either a protein, a carb, a fat, or some variation of that. Protein's job is to build muscle and burn fat. So if you're trying to tone, you want to make sure you're having adequate amount of protein um, to assist that. Why would you want to do more than you had to?
right,
Right? I tell people all the time, you don't have to work out in order to lose weight. I think you should work out for your
right,
mental health and to keep, the tone and everything, but you really don't have to. So if you were to do, 30 minutes of cardio, because that just brings you joy, like you want to do a spin class or yoga or something, that's because that's what you like to do it. But for toning, it is some weights. You can use your own body weight for resistance. or like a low weight dumbbell and just do 12 to 15 reps 3 times and do that 3 times a week. That's it.
That is very simple. And I know some people
Yeah.
who will be watching this who will be delighted that it is that simple.
Now, for my friends that have had, let's say, like gastric bypass, right? Like rapid weight loss in 5 minutes flat, or
Right,
they're doing the injections or whatever, they're going to have a ton of loose skin. The body will catch up. It
right.
does. So that's more of like an overnight thing. They are not going to see that same result with like the loose skin. But if you give it time and you stick with it, you do that consistently, you'll get the results that you're looking for.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah, I think people try to make things too complicated, and
Right.
I know for me personally, I was hospitalized last year. I did actually die. And
Oh,
when I was released and came home, they didn't want me doing anything. And I'm like going from laying in my bed to laying on the couch to laying in bed. And I'm like, this is not life. I hate this. And I just started adding steps.
yeah.
And I just started, okay, you know what? I'm going to walk to the mailbox. Now I live in the country, so the mailbox is a long distance away, it's not on the highway. And the first time I made it like halfway there and went, nope, not ready for this. Turned around and came home, drove to the mailbox. But
Yeah.
it is little by little, I got there again. And I was able to start doing some exercising again. And it just made my whole outlook on life feel so much brighter. For a
And you're
while, I was like, I'm dead, I'm dead. I can't move, I'm dead. But it took little simple things one at a time.
yeah, and you're building confidence along the way, right? So I tell people, like for people that, have not just had a major hospitalization and are just generally like in decent health, right?
Mhm.
Um, you can plot out like a mile route.
Right.
And if you want to start running, just run telephone pole to telephone pole.
Yeah.
Like, because you can see it, or mailbox to mailbox, whatever's, and I don't know, your mailboxes are probably like 9 miles apart, but
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
suburbs, for my suburban friends, they're not, right?
Right.
But like you can see the milestone. So just
Mhm.
do that and you've
Yeah.
built the confidence. And so the next time you're like, well, I'm just going to skip that mailbox and go to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But have the route like laid out so that, maybe you end up walking the entire 3 mile route um, in the beginning, but over time, now you realize you've been running half of it
Yeah.
and you build confidence.
It
And
really
there will
is.
be a time when you say, I'm not going to walk that. I'm stronger than that. And so run it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is about building on those little tiny steps. I used to run all the time, and then all of a sudden I can't. They're telling me, no, your heart is still weak. Don't do anything. I'm like, you're killing me here, literally. So just do something little.
Yeah.
And those little few steps I started with were enough to make me get out of that dark place of I would never be able to do it again.
And that's a great point to your own memory.
Yeah,
I used to be able to do this. I used to be
right.
able to lift that. I go through that too and the issues with my back. Like, what do you mean I can't
Yeah,
lift a dumbbell? I've run a marathon.
yeah.
Yeah, you did like 10 years ago. Excuse me.
Yeah, you
Um,
you get you hit a certain milestone in age, and all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean I'm old now? No, yeah, I
yeah.
know that was 10 years ago, but it's still yesterday. It was yesterday, I'm telling you. Um,
Yeah. And so
yeah,
compare you to the you of just yesterday. So yesterday, was Sunday and maybe you did nothing and today you did a little something.
right,
That's the win. That's the part that gets celebrated.
right. Yeah. It's really tough when you're used to like running the marathon, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're like, I can't walk to the mailbox. That was my first thought when I got halfway and I had to turn around. I'm like, because I was really talking myself into every step after about a quarter of the way to the mailbox.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, fine, I surrender, I'm going back. But it was still an accomplishment. And it took me a day or two to realize it was still an accomplishment. And I think women expect so much of ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's really easy to get into that I can't mode. You can, you just have to maybe do it a little bit differently, a little
Yeah.
slower. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to your point, you actually died.
Yeah, I
So
say
let's
that
not,
like I had lunch yesterday. I know, but I've had some
right.
time to deal with it. Yeah.
Kind of a big deal. And
Yeah.
so just getting out walking towards the mailbox is a huge deal because,
Yeah. And
you
really
that
when
may not have happened.
yeah, one of my friends told me, if you had said I got up and sat on the porch swing on the back porch, I would have said, "Yay!" But you walked to the
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
and that was something that I had to realize that was an accomplishment because in my head, I
Absolutely.
was like, I used to run to the mailbox. What is, so yeah, it's be kind to yourself, be compassionate with yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. How can people find you?
Oh, so my Instagram is at the Colleen Greco. Colleen is with one L. That usually comes up. My mom just misspelled it when I was born. No fancy
Yeah,
story there. Um, and I would love to connect with people and have a conversation and see, how we can help you just see the beauty in your own situation
yeah,
because there is a lot of beauty. It's just very natural to get caught up in the things that maybe don't look how you want them to look or aren't um, exactly the way that you want them to be. But there's a lot of good.
yeah.
And, we just have to dust that off and get that right back out in front.
Yeah, and that is one big lesson. That was my big takeaway from actually dying is you have to really look at what is beautiful. Always look for the beauty. You're going to find it. We
Yep.
find what we look for.
It's right there.
It's
It's
right there.
literally right next to the thing that you're focused on.
Yep. So
Yep.
thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having
We're going to
me.
have to do this again.
Oh, yeah.
Both of us are feeling better. Uh, And yeah, I know very valuable information. Everybody look her up, please. I will have a link to your website and
Okay.
everything below the description of the video. And thank you for being my guest.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for having
Guys,
me.
for watching, as always, I really appreciate it. So thanks, everybody. I will see you next time. Bye.